Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. My name is Nick Milkey. It's Sunday night, and we're hanging out talking Star Wars. It's one of my favorite things to do in the week, although I have to say this weekend has been a little bit of a win for me all the way around. I got to spend the weekend without my wife and my children. Shout out to my wife and children, who I love tremendously. But I got to go spend the weekend at the lake with my buddy Matt. Shout out to Matt. And we did the kind of things that old dads do when they go to the lake without their families. We drank beer, we went fishing, we went to bed earlier probably than we even do at home. We ate chips and every kind of dip you can think of, and we just got to chill out and hang out. So it was a great weekend, and what a great way to cap off that weekend than to be here hanging out with you guys. I know we've already got a great crew in the live chat. I see Cam, I see Michael, I saw JD, I see David, Matthew. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us on Sunday night. I am really excited because we have some exciting shows coming up over the course of the next few weeks. It's funny the way this podcasting thing works. Some weeks I've got guests lined up for the next 6 weeks in a row. And then at some point I look up and I feel like I'm about to enter a free fall and I don't have anybody lined up. And then just like that, it can change. And all of a sudden I've got 4 more people lined up that are going to be awesome. And we're going to bring you some awesome conversations over the next several weeks. Next Sunday night, we will be on at our regular time, but we're going to change it up ever so slightly. I'm going to pre-record the show the middle of the week this week. We have an awesome guest, and she was not able to join me next Sunday night live. So I'm going to record the show in the middle of the week, and we will still drop it on Sunday night as a YouTube premiere at 8 o'clock. So I hope y'all will still jump in. We'll have the live chat going. Love to hear your feedback about that. But before we get to that exciting guest, I have an exciting guest tonight that I am very excited to bring on. A lot of you that listen to the show or watch the show in the live stream, you already know my guest. You know him as a part of the duo of the As Father and Son podcast. I had his dad, David Drennan, on actually the second episode that I did of the new live stream version of the show. David was on as a guest. And so I knew at some point I wanted to get Timothy on. I figured at some point I would get both of them on and do a show together. That's still in the works somewhere down the line. But I'm going to bring on tonight my friend Timothy Drennan from the As Father and Son podcast. Timothy is a podcaster. He is a father. All of those things are going to play into our conversation tonight. And he is also a Twitch streamer. And I'm going to be the old guy in the room when I'm the first one to say, I don't understand, for the most part, Twitch. I know what it is. It's, you stream and video games, all that stuff. But what the service that Timothy has provided that he doesn't really know that he has provided over the last however long is periodically when I'm laying in bed late at night and it'll say, Timothy's playing a game on Twitch. And so I'll pull it up on YouTube. And it's very sublime to just lay there in bed in the dark watching this person play a video game that I've never heard of in my life, and just chatting and having these little conversations and watching him. It's very therapeutic in its own way. So I am pleased to bring in my video game therapist, Mr. Timothy Drennan.
I'm very glad to know that I've been in bed with you every night for the last couple of months. It's news to me, but I'm glad to find it out.
It's news to other people in my house too. But you know what? The internet's a weird place. So what can I say?
Thank God for the internet, though. Thanks for having me on tonight. I'm excited about this.
It is my pleasure to have you on. We've got a bunch of folks in the chat. They're hanging out, and they're going to, I'm sure, comment on some of the things that we talk about along the way. But I said, I've been wanting to have you on. I had your dad on. I love giving your dad a hard time about the fact that
Me too.
What we're about to do right now is make our signature cocktail for the evening. And your dad was on the very second episode of the live stream version of Podcast of the Wills, and I hadn't started doing the cocktails yet. So he texted me after I started doing it and said, that's great. I have to come back on and get my own cocktail. So he is still going to get his chance, but you get your chance first. So sorry, Dad. That's the way it goes. So what we are going to do tonight, let me see if I can get my screen share going on. We have Timothy's Not My Father's Root Beer. And I have to say, when I was researching drinks, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, sometimes I have these moments of lack of inspiration because a lot of times for me, it's just, bourbon in a glass with some ice. And so what am I going to do? What is going to be whatever? I don't know where I actually got this idea, but in my head, I thought, I wonder if people make cocktails out of root beer. I like root beer. I know there's hard root beer, like you can buy in the grocery store in the beer section. And so for a moment, I thought maybe we'd do something like that. But I thought, no, let's get a little more creative. Let's look and see. So what we are doing tonight, it is not complicated. I have my Millennium Falcon glass, and I'm going to pour in, it says 2 ounces of bourbon. I'm just going to pour in some bourbon. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some root beer in on top of that. Shout out to the fine folks at Publix for sponsoring this root beer. They're not a sponsor yet, but they can be. And I have to say, I was very skeptical when I considered the possibility of bourbon and root beer.
Well, I have to ask, is this big enough?
I think it's going to work. I think you totally nailed it. So,
well, Slanja.
That's right. Cheers to you, sir. It's not your father's root beer.
It is not, but it's good. And I spilled a little on my chair, which my wife is really going to appreciate.
That's
the smell.
not bad.
That's not bad at all.
I never in my life considered throwing some bourbon into a root beer, but
listen, I don't know if my dad has ever talked online about his weird, his and my weird thing with mixing things. But my dad's the guy who puts avocado in his eggs in the morning, and if he will blend anything once to see what it tastes like. And I, for the most part, inherited that from him. So I like down.
That. It's an adventurous spirit. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law tends to do that when it comes to mixed drinks. He's always making cream soda and vodka with a splash of cherry juice, or just kind of what he has on hand. So
you said bourbon when you texted me, and I was like, oh, thank God, because I actually happened to have just a little bit of bourbon left, and so this was the last of my bourbon. This whole thing is not full of alcohol. I would like to make that disclaimer. My dad is watching.
Timothy's going to be on the floor, and you're going to have to pull in a sub halfway through.
Star Wars here, guys.
That's the best. So we've gotten the important stuff out of the way. Now we're going to have a conversation, which I'm also excited about. I made some jokes on Twitter a little bit at your expense as we were getting ready for this week and as I was doing promo, because you are what I like to refer to as one of the young guys. You're a younger kid. You're an adult. Obviously, you're a grown man.
I'm not yet 30, and I'm holding on to it.
And so you are decently younger than I. And so I always find it really interesting when I get to talk to folks, whether it's somebody my age who grew up with the original trilogy, somebody younger than me. So what I want you to do is kind of just start out a little bit with your Star Wars origin stories. What are the first Star Wars you saw? I'm sure obviously your dad was involved because you guys have a podcast together. And I know he has Star Wars cred as you do, but talk a little bit about your Star Wars origins.
Yeah, for sure. So the way that I always like to introduce myself when someone's like, oh, you like Star Wars? And I go, oh, buddy, you asked the wrong person. It's not the way that it happened, but it's the way that I feel that it happened, is that when I was born on a hot August day, my dad brings my mom home from the hospital, puts her gently to bed, take a nap. You did good, hon. Takes the baby, which is me, sits down on the couch and turns Star Wars on so that the first thing my infant senses are exposed to is Star Wars. Not what happened, but how it feels it happened. Sidebar, when my son was born, that is exactly what I did. I had planned it my entire life. We got home, my wife went to bed, and I was like, here we go. Pictures are on Twitter. So, I don't have a memory of a time that there wasn't Star Wars. It just I could quote the movies, as soon as I could talk, I was talking Star Wars. And we joke about some of the movies my dad let me watch that now that I have a little boy, I'm like, I question your judgment there, maybe a little. I was quoting the 89 Batman. I had that movie down when I was 2, and mom was not a fan. I've told my wife it'll be fine, but she strongly disagrees. So I don't know about that one, but Star Wars was just always there. And then, so I would have been, and again, I'm one of the young, so I'm sorry about this, but I was 5 for the 25th anniversary, and they did a re-release of and Dad'll correct me after the fact if I get any of this wrong, but I believe if I'm remembering correctly, they did a re-release for the 25th anniversary of or no, not the 25th, the 20th anniversary, sorry, of
Yes,
Star Wars
20.
in 97. And I was 5 for that. And we got to go see it in the theater. And so I got to see the original Star Wars on a big screen. And I don't remember being in the theater for that, but I remember being in the car on the way to it. Like I have a distinct memory of thinking, I'm about to see Star Wars on a big screen. And then I was there at the midnight premiere of The Phantom Menace when I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old at a midnight premiere of a movie. And now that I have a 1-year-old, I think, wow, that's only 5 years away. I would do it. I will do it. I'll absolutely do it. And it just my whole life, it was just Star Wars. I used to meet my dad at the door with a pair of lightsabers in the hand, like when he'd get home from work, and I'd be like, hey, briefcase down, take this, let's go. So yeah, Star Wars just always was there.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know if you saw this important message, but your mother is watching too, and you've been instructed to say hi to your mom.
Hi, Mom.
No, and I think that's so great. And I've heard you guys talk about this before on your show and on your stream, talking about it with your dad when he was on here. I love, you kind of have an interesting story as opposed to some other folks your age, because you really did. Your first Star Wars was still the original trilogy because of your dad. It's not like, because you really would have been born to be the perfect era, like you said, to be 6 when Phantom Menace came out. For that to have been your first real Star Wars, but you got it sooner than that, thanks to your awesome father who knew how to raise you the right way.
He did.
So I wonder, I'm not going to make you choose because there's too much toxicity in the fandom as a whole, but I'm interested in your thoughts on the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, because you did grow up with the prequel trilogy. Like, obviously they were a significant part of your growing up years, even though you had the original trilogy first. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So for me, it's not like a one is better than the other, or like one better. Like I said, Star Wars was always there. So there was never any mystery for me. Vader was always Luke's father. Luke and Leia were always siblings. Old Ben was always going to die. The Death Star was always going to get blown up right at the last second, but they were going to pull it off and everything was going to be okay. There was never a mystery for me. Like, it was just, the stories were just there and I knew them by heart. And so I never had, not like that's a bad thing, but they were just always there and always on in the house and always something that I knew. And so the difference between the original trilogy and the prequels for me is I did grow up with the prequels. I was Anakin Skywalker. I was a little bit younger than him because he's like 9 or 10 in the Phantom Menace, and so I was younger, but I was a kid. I was a little kid watching a little kid who looked like me, mop of dirty blonde hair and the late 90s haircut, whatever they were trying to do with kids' hair back then. Like, I had that going on, and Anakin was someone that I could be. And then another couple years go by and Attack of the Clones, I'm 10 years old. And as far as I was concerned as a 9-year-old, Attack of the Clones was the greatest romance love story ever told, with, the best romantic writing and romantic performances and everything. And it wasn't until I was like a late teenager I was like, so maybe this isn't the best dialogue, but I will, like, to my grave, I will still defend that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the romance story and like what it does for Star Wars.
If it helps, when I was growing up, that movie for me was Karate Kid 2. I thought that was the most romantic, when they go to Okinawa and he's defending Yukio and the whole, and then of course the Peter Cetera song that goes along with it. That whole thing. That was for me at that age. So it happens to all of us.
That's so funny because my wife and I grew up watching the original Karate Kid, and I'd seen 2 once, and I didn't really remember it very much, but I loved the original. And so I had started Cobra Kai, and I was like, I've got to get my wife to watch this. And she didn't know Karate Kid at all. And so we watched the first 2 back to back. And like, as an adult watching Karate Kid 2, the stakes are like so high,
Super
so
high.
fast, especially when you consider that the first movie takes place over the course of months and the second movie is like 3 days, and the stakes just get real high real fast. And so we were kind of having a laugh at it, but my dad made the comment, I was making that joke to him, not like it was a bad thing, but just like it's different. And he was like, yeah, but in 1985 or whatever year that was the epitome of romance. Like that was as good as it got. And I can totally see that. And that's exactly what Attack of the Clones was for me. And then by the grace of God, I never wanted or was allowed to have the Padawan haircut.
Nice.
I did in fact know a guy who, like, full credit to him, he had the shortcut hair with a rat tail and a pony, like the little braid going down. I knew a guy in college who he was like, I wanted to do it, so he committed. But by the time Revenge of the Sith rolled around, that first screenshot that released of Anakin with long hair, I was like, I'm 13 years old, and that's what I want my hair to look like.
That's
and
right.
It did.
That's fantastic. No, that's such a good, and I like that. It part of your growing up Star Wars journey involved haircuts, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, for sure.
That we get to the meat of what's really the most important thing.
Is the hair. It's
That's
all
right.
about, like,
the hair.
Listen, the hair, my hair is the bane of my family's existence because I'm just averse to getting haircuts. I don't know why, I just am. And my hair was made for the 70s. I've got the feather, like when it grows out, I could have the feathery Luke Skywalker look.
That's all right. Well, then that begs an important off the cuff question. One person, best hair in Star Wars. Go.
Ooh. Give me a second, because I got to think. I got it. Poe Dameron.
I think you're right.
Poe Dameron, best hair in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Listen, funny story, and my wife can get mad at me for this later. My wife's not a big like celebrity crush person. I've only seen her react to a celebrity in a like, oh wow, that's a good looking dude way. I think twice. Once was a trailer for Kong Skull Island, and it's doing like the zoom up the helicopter, and it comes up on Tom Hiddleston, and it kind of pauses on the bicep for a second, and she goes, wow. And I was like, okay. But I'm fine with that, because
that's right.
In the theater in The Last Jedi, when Poe leads the is like, this is a mutiny and he's taken over, I'm not exaggerating, my wife goes, no, that is a man. And I was like, I'm a man. So
I love that. That actually rings pretty good with Infinity War when they pick up Thor and he's laying on the table.
That's my favorite. Honestly, I think that's my favorite bit in the entire MCU is, you're a dude. This is a man. That is, like, I think that all the time.
It's so good. It's actually really, really great. So, well, that's good. I think I agree with you. Poe Dameron is probably the best hair in Star Wars.
Yeah, he's. I mean, all credit to Han Solo, but Poe Dameron is arguably the best looking dude in Star Wars.
That's right. Well, and
I'm fine with that. I have no problem with it.
I may have to make that a Twitter poll tomorrow and pick like 4 because what we're not ignoring, but what we both readily jumped away from is, like, obviously you have the iconic cinnamon roll buns that Leia had.
That's true.
But then you also have like the 37 different like high stakes hair things that Padme had going on. Like, there was structural engineering involved in some of that.
You could write a medical thesis on Padme's hairstyles alone. Leave her wardrobe out of it.
No doubt. Well, and I do remember as a kid, for whatever reason, I thought when Luke came up out of the water in the trash compactor, when they come out and his hair was slicked back wet, that felt cool. That felt like a cool guy. Like,
I was the same way. I'd be like, man, his hair gets wet just like mine.
It looks cool. So
yeah.
Well, now that we've spent so much time talking about hair in Star Wars, obviously that's going to be somebody else's top 7 list. But let's talk about this, because you have such a great story, and I'm drawn to the fact that Star Wars is something you share with your dad. I got Star Wars from my dad. I'm sharing Star Wars with my girls, which is its own unique situation as the father of 4 daughters. I don't have little boys attacking me when I walk in the door with lightsabers. But I have girls who say, hey, can we snuggle on the couch and watch Rebels? Can we, it's something, it's endearing in its own way. But you guys have a podcast together and talk about, as father and son. I think if it started, did it start with you guys playing Super Star Wars?
Yeah. So it came from, so like when I moved out and went to college, one of the weirdest parts was just not being able to sit around. I want to come back to the top 7
David, we're going to go ahead and mark it down.
It.
Actually, we're gonna do David and Timothy for top 7 hairstyles, and you're both going to do separate lists, independent of one another, and we're going to do it match game style or newlywed game style.
Listen, I need a written, like, notarized document. I'm a notary, so I'll notarize it myself. That's not a conflict of interest, but I need like an official document giving me permission to grow out my Anakin Skywalker hair before this takes place.
That's right.
So my wife and sister, who does my hair, can't stop me. There comes a point when I'm overdue for a haircut.
All we need is another global pandemic where nobody gets haircuts.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there comes a point, because my sister's the one who does my hair, and she's very, very, very good. But there comes a point where she tells me I'm not allowed to tell people she does my hair anymore because I'm not representing her work. She said that to me once, and I was like, that's fair.
Yeah, totally fair.
But yeah, as father and son came from when I went to college, like one of the weirdest parts was not being at home and being part of the family conversation. And even still, I mean, it's been 10 years since I went to college, more. And there are even still times where I have to remind my parents, like, I wasn't around for that conversation. You got to fill me in on what's going on. But like when I would come home from college, and then especially when I got married, second I'm in the door, me and Dad, and particularly when I got married, because that was when The Force Awakens was about to come out. And so Star Wars was new again. There was really something to talk about. And as soon as I got in the door, me and my dad would just meet and be like, let's go. And we, like, not even planning it, as it just would happen so naturally, like immediately start talking Star Wars, start talking theories, start talking the most recent thing we watched or read or rumors we heard and all of that. And Dad consistently was making the joke, we need to start recording this. Other people would get a kick out of this. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, all these conversations we're having as father and son, we could totally call it as father and son. It would be a channel. It would be a thing. And we talked about it for a long time and just never really committed to sit down and do it. And then finally Dad was just like, let's pick a day, set up a camera. I'm going to come over. We're just going to record ourselves doing something. I don't care what. So that was the day we set up Super Star Wars. I figured out how to record the gameplay so that we could, keep it. And I had no idea what I was doing. But I was able to edit it all together and just put out that short, I think it's like 5 minutes or whatever, but just with no sound equipment or really high quality editing software, I put together a little, video, and it kicked off from there. And we don't get together and do the kind of like pre-planned or like after the fact edited things as much anymore, because I run a business out of my house and I work a full-time job and I have a 1-year-old and Dad works a full-time job. So that's not as easy, but the conversation is always happening. And so we figure if we can have it on camera and share it with other people, why not do that? Because we've got to meet and get connected to a lot of really cool people, case in point. So it's been a lot of fun doing this.
And you hit on something that I say pretty much every week, which is when we started this podcast 3 years ago, it was me and my buddy Steve, and it was the same thing. We don't live in the same town. We saw each other 1 or 2 times a year, and every time we saw each other, we just deep dove into Star Wars and whatever. And so we decided to start this podcast, and I came home all excited on this, riding this high of like, hey, we're going to do this thing. And I told my wife, I was like, Steve and I are going to start a podcast. And she said, who do you think is going to listen to that? And I said, honestly, I don't care, because if it's just the two of us, we still get to talk about Star Wars. But like you said, the Star Wars community, the Star Wars podcasting community is so fun. And I've made so many great friends. And especially in the last year, obviously, we all talk about that and the ability that we've had to stay connected in the last, over this global pandemic. But it's exactly right. And like now I am excited about the idea of, my ramblings about Star Wars are recorded for some version of posterity, that if my kids still like Star Wars in 15 years and want to go listen to it and be like, oh yeah, this is what Dad said about whatever, or I hope to still be here, but I'm just saying obviously. It's another thing that's still hanging out and is a way to preserve something that's important. And it's something that is a connecting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I distracted myself because I've got like this red line going down my neck that was not there when I sat down. So I don't know what that's about.
Well, thanks a lot, bourbon and root beer. That's right. If we end up with some sort of like exogorth popping out of the middle of your chest,
Yeah, keep it going, because at that point it's history.
Yeah, we're gonna get some mileage out of that somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Well, talking about your show, talking about what you guys do, and I've tuned in on, when y'all do sometimes Saturday mornings. There have been some Saturday mornings when y'all have been attempting to play Battlefront. I believe one time I tuned in and it was your dad attempting the Ewok murder fest. And that was pretty good, because I feel like your dad and I are pretty much on the same level when it comes to video games. Like, hey, this is fun. I'm terrible at it, but let's have fun. We've talked a little bit about how behind the curve I have been on video games. I got a PlayStation 4 back in like January. And so I was late to do the Battlefront storyline. I did Squadrons. I finished Jedi Fallen Order just last week. Like, these amazing fun things.
Yeah.
But everybody else is like, yeah, I did that 2 years ago. What are you talking about? So I'm still terrible at them. So I relate to your dad when it comes to that. But what I see is the connections of family. And obviously your show is called As Father and Son, and it's about you and your dad. I think something that's so great, and you talked about it kind of in the beginning of the interview, now that you have a son and you have, this ability to pass along Star Wars and pass along these family traditions. So that leads us to our top 7 list. And what we are doing tonight, this is our first kind of pseudo repeat top 7 list. And it was actually your choice, which I thought was even better. We're going to do Timothy's top 7 Star Wars parenting moments. And let's get this out of the way, get to this fanciness right here. And what we're going to do, I went back and I wrote down the 7 that your dad picked. And when we get to the end tonight, at the end of your 7, I'm going to recap just kind of quickly the 7 your dad picked and see where the overlap is and what kind of differences, generational things show up. We'll save the newlywed game deal for best hair. But I did like the idea of doing this topic again with it. It's not like it was some random other person. It's your actual dad, to see how different or how similar your lists can be. So
it was funny when you asked what I'd want to do for a top 7 list. I almost didn't even put parenting down, because Dad had already done it. And which in the immediate moment, I wasn't even thinking that Dad had done it. I was just like, oh, that's too on the nose for me. And then I thought, my channel is As Father and Son. Why would I not offer that up as a suggestion? So I put a couple others in there, but I was like, this will be the one.
Absolutely. Well, and tiniest peek behind the curtain, it would have been the thing that I suggested. And it was the thing I suggested to your dad, because I don't want somebody to feel like it's too on brand, but also like that's kind of your deal. And I want it, I want our guests, I want our guests to be challenged and have fun with the list. I don't want to be like, oh God, I've got to talk about parenting again, but that's not the vibe I got from either of you.
No, this is our thing.
That being said, we are going to jump in with your number 7. And I have Jen's message from Galen.
Yeah. So this, and it's so hard because I said this to you earlier, for every moment that I have on my top 7 list, there's moments that aren't on the list because of that. And it was so hard. And I was debating whether or not I wanted to do this. And this actually was kind of in the place. I told you I was going to have some honorable mentions.
Absolutely.
So the honorable mention that could have taken the place of this one would have been, spoilers if you haven't seen Rebels, but the last moments with Kanan in Rebels. They're kind of similar moments in what they do, but I chose this one because of what it means to the characters involved and to the story as a whole. So for Jyn, it's her entire life has been built around the idea that her father, left her for the Empire and, is alive or dead or whatever. And then she finds out he's working for the Empire and, well, he just left me and didn't care. And it's the culmination of him saying, everything I've done for you, everything I've done to protect you and to give you and to give the galaxy a fighting chance. It's that mixed with the consequences or results and implications from this moment of a father protecting his little girl is the reason that the rebels are able to destroy the Death Star. Absolutely. Is the reason that Luke Skywalker comes into the story. is the reason for the first victory of the rebellion, giving the rebellion a fighting chance to actually show the galaxy the Empire can't just kill us at will because we can fight back. Like, there are so many implications and so much that happens in the story and that changes the lives of countless people because one father did everything in his life for his little girl.
Absolutely. And I went back and rewatched the scene earlier, maybe this week, maybe last week. Actually, it was last week. After that third episode of Bad Batch, because part of the gift that keeps on giving connected to exactly this moment is, of course, there are several times when Galen is talking to Jen and he calls her my Stardust, my Stardust. So when they go to the Imperial Armory on Scarif and they're looking for the file or whatever, it's listed in there as Stardust, which is great. But also, you know, she has that moment. He's like, "How do you know?" She said, "Because it's me." Like, that was a huge moment alone. Right. But in that, you get hyperspace tracking, you get Project War Mantle, which was mentioned in Bad Batch in episode 3. The dark saber, like all those things that are just rattled off as Cassian's reading through that list.
I remember sitting in that scene thinking, oh my God, we're going to get to find out what all of those things are one day.
and I love, and we're seeing that come to fruition. And I've said several times recently, it's a very Marvel thing that Disney is doing with Star Wars, which is you drop it here and then 2 things down the line, you flesh out what that thing is. And I love that kind of storytelling and getting those little things. But tying directly to this is she's his Stardust. And, you know, that was that connection. And I love how you describe that. Everything that happened in this whole saga is tied directly back to a father's love for his daughter.
Which something that Dad and I, anytime we're watching, I mean, you know, particularly when there's a new movie, but especially, you know, with the shows or if we're reading or whatever, there's just a thing that we'll say to each other all the time. Like when we're really excited about, you know, something new, Star Wars is about parents doing whatever they can for their kids. And I mean, you can boil everything down to Star Wars is about parents doing for their children or parent relationships. What would you do for those that are in your care?
That's right.
And that's why we connect so much to it and what I love so much about it. And so, yeah, that one, Kanan's sacrifice touches on that same thing and what it inspires for Ezra and for the rebellion as a whole. But I think the direct implications of discovering what Galen has spent his life doing and why and who's been, you know, in his heart the whole time, that's what Star Wars is all about.
Absolutely. Well, and I have to ask this, and this is a very direct but pretty obvious question. A year after having a child of your own, do those stories hit you in an even more different and impactful way than they did prior to becoming a father yourself?
Listen, I cry so easily now. Like I've always been kind of like, I'll get like a misty eye, oh, that was good. Like, you know, the eyes kind of get red kind of thing. We were watching freaking Superman and they're putting the baby in the spaceship. And that's just, you talk about things that have just always been there. You don't really think about, you know, the implications of them or whatever. Superman's always put in the thing and then he's, you know, sent to Earth and he's a baby and he grows up and they're putting the baby in the thing. And I'm sitting there like wiping tears out of my eyes, like the Finding Nemo, like, now there is a father taking care of his little boy. And like, that was Superman. So with Star Wars, everything hits way harder.
Well, and I know some of my girls are watching the show right now and they laugh because one of the ones that does it for me is the scene in Apollo 13 when they're coming back and they're in that blackout after they've re-entered the atmosphere and they're waiting for the radio signal to reestablish and for the capsule to show up with the parachute. And of course, everybody's intention about it. But the part that gets me is the son who's away at military school. Like, he's not even with the rest of his family. And he's just sitting there waiting to hear, like, oh, yeah, my dad made it back from space. Like, for whatever reason, like, the first time I saw that, even before I ever had kids, like, that just melted me. And it hasn't changed since.
I've never seen Apollo 13.
Oh.
I know. There's
as soon as this is over with,
Dad's
you
watching.
need to go.
We'll put that on the list. Dad and I have a list of movies that he'll like talk about.
Goes on the list.
I've never seen that one, right? Yeah, that one's on the list.
All right. Well, speaking of lists, let's move on to number 6. How does that sound?
It works for me.
We have Padme telling Anakin Annie, I'm pregnant.
Again, there are so many moments that could have gone in place of this. And actually, speaking of an honorable mention, an alternative for this would have been Leia's entire role in The Last Jedi. Like,
Right.
Leia through that movie is a parent and a guide and a teacher, and everything that she's doing with Poe and what she means to Rey and to the rebellion, resistance, and all of it is so impactful. And I have to shout that out because instead of that, again, what has the most bearing on the story and the bearing on parenthood in Star Wars, this is the moment Darth Vader becomes a father. Like, this is the moment that Anakin Skywalker finds out he's going to be a dad. This is where, and what I'm about to say is going to tie back in with my number one. Yeah, with my number one moment. This is the moment that Darth Vader becomes possible. Because when Anakin, there's been the darkness, there's been the, everything we saw in the Clone Wars and his moments of impulsivity and losing Ahsoka and all of these things, especially after the Clone Wars, and being able to come to this with new context of Anakin has just come off of losing Ahsoka. In this exact moment, he thinks Ahsoka is out there cleaning up Mandalore and that things are going to be great and they're going to all get the band back together. And now he finds out he's going to be a parent, like he's going to be a dad. And that, having had the "hey, I'm pregnant" conversation, with my own wife before, what that does to you as a dad, at least for me, your experience is, I've got to take in what this means. The entire rest of my life is going to be different forever. Everything that matters to me can't matter anymore. Everything that I have ever wanted is out the window because all that matters is this little life now. And seeing that in a Skywalker and in my favorite story, in Star Wars, that moment, what that does for Anakin and what it does for the story as a whole, it sets him up to become Darth Vader. Because, parenthood makes you who you are supposed to be. But if you go about it the wrong way, it can make you who you never should have been. And the challenge and the fear in becoming a parent is, what if I do it wrong? What if I mess him up? What if I mess up? What if I do this wrong and it hurts him and it hurts the people around me? And you're gonna make mistakes, but Anakin's whole problem is control and wanting to be in charge of everything and to be in control of his world. And he's the perfect storm of chaos and of just wanting to do things right. But the mere fact that he has a wife who is now pregnant uproots his entire life as a Jedi, and everything about who he is defined by being a Jedi. But now he's got this secret marriage and this idea of, like, when the war's over, what am I going to do? And now there's a baby, and you can't hide a baby that, she's going to have a baby, and that's going to have come from somewhere. And he sure hangs out at her apartment a lot after hours. Like, people are going to put the math together, and just all of everything, if you want to call it this, like, the original trilogy comes from this moment.
For sure.
Everything comes from Annie, I'm pregnant. And the tragedy of the Revenge of the Sith starts in this moment, because once there is a baby, not just a wife, but a baby, those are two lives. Those are two of the two most important lives in his world. And then 2 scenes later, he's having a dream that they're going to die.
That's right.
That would send any father down the dark side if there's the chance that you could save them. And it attaches. I could go on about this moment because it's so big.
No, absolutely.
I haven't even really discussed this moment out loud since becoming a dad, since having, I remember the moment my wife looked at me and didn't say a word. She just looked at me and her eyes were bugged out, and I knew. And that experience was such a joyful, and just, there's so many emotions that come with that. And there's so much joy in it, but then also all of the darkness that accompanies it in this story. It's so important, and that's why it had to be on my list.
Oh, no doubt. And honestly, and not to make light of the moment, but I think another more modern pop culture version of that moment is Walter White in Breaking Bad. The high school math teacher becomes a meth kingpin because he was going to do whatever he could to, it started out to save his family. He took the same dark turn that Anakin did. And, it became the power, and it became, all of that. And so while they're not exactly the same, I certainly think they run a parallel path. And
That's
as you were saying
really
that,
nice connection. I've not thought of that, but that's really, really good. I like that a lot.
yeah, that's what popped up as you were describing that. So, and again, I agree with you too. I relate as a father. You know, we have these conversations from time to time when, you know, my wife would say, you know, what would you do if, you know, if somebody did something to one of our, and there's that part of me that goes, I know what I think I would do, but I couldn't tell you what I'd actually do because I hope to God I'm never in that moment. Right. But I guarantee you it would be, you know, I relate to Liam Neeson in Taken in a way that I didn't know that I would, you know, before. Like, I don't know if I have those skills.
Like, that's the most realistic movie, like action movie ever made. They take a man's daughter, so he kills everyone. Like, that's the plot. They take the man's daughter, so he kills literally everyone in the movie.
Well, and it also makes me think of, I talk about this pretty regularly on this show too. My all-time favorite television show is The West Wing. And there's a great episode, Charlie, who's the president's assistant, young guy. His mother was a Washington, D.C. cop, and she's killed in the line of duty at some point before he comes into the show. And so the president's asking him one night, as the conversation revolves around capital punishment or something else like that. And he says, you know, Charlie, you know, if they ever caught, you know, the person that killed your mom, you know, would you want them to be put to death through the courts or whatever? And he said, no, Mr. President. And he hesitates for that moment while the president looks at him, and he said, I'd want to do it myself. And that's what, you know, and he pivots into, but I'm lucky I don't have to be in that position and that we have courts and a system and whatever. But that's a core part of who we are, whether it's a parent, a child. I'm going to do what I have to. And I think you're exactly right. It's such a pivotal moment because it wasn't just Padme anymore. It wasn't just...
A couple of nights ago in my house, our smoke alarm went off, and it was just a malfunction. There was nothing that the battery wasn't dead. There was absolutely nothing wrong. It was like just a random bug malfunction. Like, we looked it up. It's possible that, like, if a bug flew into it and crawled into it, it could have triggered it. Like, there's a whole number of things that could have caused it. But whoever manufactured this thing, the alarm light that goes off when the smoke alarm goes off is not, you know, normally it's like a red light flashes, right? It's amber. The name of the color is amber. It's literally the color of fire.
It looks like fire.
Just, and it's not like a flash. It's like kind of pulsing and ebbing and flowing. So it's got this like wavy look to it. So the smoke alarm goes off at like 4 a.m, run out of the room, and the smoke alarm is right outside my son's room. So I round the corner, and all I can see is this golden warm glow coming from where his bedroom door is. And the immediate, like, I just ran. I didn't stop. I didn't pause. It was just, I'm going through the fire now. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to be a burn victim to get my son out of that room. And I come around the corner, and it's just a flashing light. And then I have to stop and go, what in the name of Christmas is going on here? But like, that impulse was just, I'm going through the fire. That's what's about to happen. And there's nothing that can stop it. And I like thinking of that in the context of what comes from this moment in the movie. Like, I get it. I'm not saying I'm going to, you know, become a serial killer and commit mass genocide, but like, they connect you to what Anakin is about to go through and do in this movie. Any person who's ever heard the words, "Hey, I'm pregnant," gets it.
That's right.
And you can look at it and
you have Palpatine playing on that too.
Yeah.
I can
with
help
the
you
wrong
save her.
person in your ear. Any one of it, like Anakin becomes all of us. He becomes every dad. Like, yeah, I'll absolutely do that. And then you think of how many dads go wrong. How many of them went wrong from the best motivations? Like, it makes you, I didn't think I could, but I could stay here for a long time because there's so much to unpack from.
There is so much to unpack. Well, let's keep it moving. Let's see what number 5 holds for us, because I know we've got another great choice coming right up. Din taking off his helmet on Morak.
You could just say The Mandalorian and call that the best parenting in Star Wars. Like, if the rest of the saga is about people doing their best to parent okay and things going wrong and they learn from their mistakes, then The Mandalorian is just dad of the year, like just forget it. Like once he like leaves him with the Imperials and is like, never mind, I'm gonna go John Wick real quick, and takes him back. Like, it's just the best parenting in Star Wars. But now at this moment, like, I've watched it and I can't decide, does he hesitate, or is it just this is happening and he takes it up? Like, is it am I going to, or it just comes off? Because the way that I read it, the way that I take it is, this is what it is, helmet off, it doesn't matter. And like, oh my gosh, when he pulled, they've made it such a sacred thing that you can't see his face, that like when the IG droid takes the helmet off to heal him at the end of the first season, it feels sacred, but there's like that kind of euphoric sense of, oh my gosh, it works because the droid's not alive. So like it works. This is okay. Nothing's broken. Nothing's wrong with this. This is such a neat moment that I, as a fan, get to, as a spectator, get to be part of. This is the exact opposite. It's something sacred being, it's like, I mean, it's like throwing the bread and the wine on the ground in church because you've got to like run and save your kids. Like it's something sacred just being discarded like it's nothing because you've got to save your kid. And that, again, like stepping back to the previous one, like it's the idea of parents will do anything. And this is the anti version of what Anakin becomes. It's he gives up everything that matters to him, completely sets aside his selfish, not even selfish, but his self-focused desires, because for all intents and purposes, he is this kid's dad. And that is what a dad does for his kid. And it just, when the helmet came off, like I was so like hyped with the episode that I didn't cry, but like my emotions were just like right up here in my throat. It's so good.
It was fantastic. And I've talked a lot about too, one of the things that stood out to me, even watching it the first time before I watched it like 4 other times, was the physical acting that he did, to where they were sitting at the table, or when somebody talked to him, he still reacted like he was used to having that helmet on. He turns his whole body, because in that helmet and in his Mandalorian armor, like that's what he had to do. There isn't peripheral vision and an easy head turn. And so like he carries that through, which to me was just such an acting choice to say, I've been doing this literally my whole life. And that's how big of a deal it is that when I take it off and my head's free, I'm still weird about it. You know, I went to the grocery store this afternoon. I needed one thing that we forgot earlier, and I ran in and ran out without a mask on, and I'm fully vaccinated, and we've got, you know, a lot of our stuff is relaxed, but like I felt like that weirdo. I felt like I had taken my Mandalorian helmet off because I was just like, how do I turn? What's going on here? But his choice in that, whether it was a directorial choice or whether it was his choice, either way was phenomenal. And to me, just strengthens exactly what you're saying, which is this was a lifelong commitment that he had made, and it was gone just like that for the kid.
Because when you become a parent, all of your lifelong commitments mean nothing next to doing whatever it takes to give that child everything. Like
we used to go out and hang out with our friends all the time, and then we had kids and we don't go anywhere.
Right. Well, it's such a naked and vulnerable thing for him to take that helmet off, and it's not just the vulnerability, it's his entire worldview, his entire religion. I mean, he says weapons are my religion, like the way of the Mandalorian way, capital W, that he's been taught is his entire existence, and it is gone like that the second he realizes the only way to save his child is to take the helmet off. Then it doesn't matter, and that's just top tier parenting storytelling. It's just so good. It's so good.
Without a doubt. Well, let's jump into number 4 while we're moving. Qui-Gon kneeling to meditate. I like what you wrote about this when you texted it to me, so I can't wait for you to talk about it.
I took notes to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Final honorable mention before we get to the top 3, because the top 3 I was completely solid on. Final honorable mention, in place of this, could have been the parallel to this moment, Obi-Wan's death. The look that, and again, when they did Star Wars, there was no, this is the first one. It was just Star Wars. But the look that Alec Guinness gives, the look on his face, the expression. And again, the cool thing about Star Wars is we get to have context added to things 40 years later, but everything we know about Anakin and Obi-Wan's dynamic, the look on his face when he sees Luke, he looks at Vader, like there's almost kind of a wink that he gives him, and then like just, the saber up. That's a parenting moment. He's taking care of the child he was charged with taking care of. He's seeing Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, and Leia all in one room together for the first time in 20 years. And he's like, this is going to be fine. Like, I've done my job. It's the fulfillment of his task, and it's the fulfillment of what he was supposed to do.
Yes.
And being the Jedi he was supposed to be, he was charged with taking care of a child and taking care of something that could save and bring balance to the Force. And in that moment, he decides he's done it to completion. Yep. He learned that from this moment. He learned that, because I love what we don't have on screen is behind Qui-Gon is young Obi-Wan, like hopping on the balls of his feet with his lightsaber, like ready to go.
Desperate to get in there.
And here's his master on his knees, eyes closed, with, Maul pacing back and forth like a predator, just, waiting and snarling. And here's Qui-Gon being the Jedi the way that, and again, I was 6, but there were people that had waited over 20 years to see the Jedi at their height, at their heyday. Qui-Gon is being the Jedi that everybody waited to see. He's got a evil, like the physical manifestation of evil, like what evil looks like, just pacing back in front of him. And he just gets on his knees, closes his eyes, and meditates, because that's what a Jedi would do. And in everything Qui-Gon does, he's always teaching. He's teaching Obi-Wan, and stuff that we've got from Master and Apprentice and book recently. Everything about his approach to Obi-Wan is trying to figure out, how do I be the right kind of Jedi for him, but also the right kind of father, because these kids never have a father. And what he's doing in this moment is teaching Obi-Wan what a Jedi is, what a good person is, what the right thing to do is. He is laying down the aggression. He's laying down the heat of the battle and focusing on what matters. And if there's something you could want to be, I mean, like, Qui-Gon is like top tier, the dad you want to be. Like, if you want to take lessons from any father figure in Star Wars, it'd be Qui-Gon, because he gets it. He can look at Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan being like, don't fight with the council again, and just be like, no, I'm going to do what I have to. And yeah, I did say that I don't want to train you anymore because you're ready. It's time. Like, he's so, I'm trying to think of the word to use. He's able to just like step back and see. He has such a wide field of view. And that's what you want to have as a dad. You want to be patient and able to take a breath and close your eyes and be like, this is going to be fine. And like, I've got a toddler who has discovered the word no, and has discovered that if he swings his hands really hard, he can hit you to express his disdain. And like, we've got to figure out the right way to parent that out of him and teach him. But I don't want to snap at him. And there are sometimes where like, he'll do something, he'll throw a tantrum, he'll, swing, he's hit me in the face, and he's 14 months old. And I'll be like, no, don't do that. And then I think, don't snap. Like, I can't snap at him. I've got to be firm. I've got to confirm to him that's not the way to do it. This is not right. But like, I don't want to snap. I don't want to jump at him. I don't ever want to react with impatience and with unkindness to him. I want to teach him regardless of it, because he doesn't know better. And that's the job, is knowing better than him and teaching him to know better. And you want to be Qui-Gon in that moment when he's a toddler and throws a tantrum. You want to close your eyes, take a breath, and don't go into a fight. Go into a teaching moment. When he's a teenager and he's got an attitude problem, I don't want to go off on him and yell at him. And I had 2 very good parents that were good examples of this. But like, Qui-Gon in this moment is what you want to be as a parent. When there is a thing that you just, the young one wants to jump at, you want to close your eyes and go slow and take a breath and learn. And that's what I love about this moment. I mean, there's so many other ways you could go with this and how good a moment it is, but it's the fulfillment of what a Jedi should be and what a good parent should be. He's teaching, even facing his death, even facing the end of things. he is teaching to the last moment, and it's so good. That's what you want to do as a dad. You want to be a good teacher.
Absolutely. And that scene, the energy in that scene always sticks out so much to me because, like you said, you've got Obi-Wan on one end, anxious, young, impulsive, ready to go. You've got Maul on the other side, prowling, waiting, and then you've just got this calm in the middle, and you've got,
it's such a good balance.
The presence of what it's going to be. And it is truly, we hear all the talk too that, Anakin, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship was very father and son, whereas Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship was much more brother. Obi-Wan even says it, "You were my brother, Anakin, and I loved you."
Right.
And so for all the wonderful things that Qui-Gon was, and to be really, one of the paramount Jedi that we get to experience in, this saga of movies, it was that, it was that very calm, measured person that he was.
Yeah. It's exactly what you want to see from a Jedi in a Star Wars movie, and it's exactly what you want to see in yourself as a parent. And I love that.
It's fantastic. Well, let's jump into the top 3 here. Number 3.
Oh my God. You want to talk about crying?
Dad, I Know from Rise of Skywalker.
Oh my gosh. So you hit the lightsaber fight on the wreckage of the Death Star, which that's an entire other TED talk, like the symbolism of these two people fighting on the wreckage of their ancestors' wars. But she's he's about to kill her. Leia's voice, Ben stabs, the heals, the runs, like all of it. And the runs, not what I meant to say. I don't know what I was trying to say. Like she runs, that's what I was trying to say. And him staying behind, building up to this, like once that happens and it's Leia's death and all of it, the tears just start falling. Like every single time, the tears are just gushing. And I have that was like a raw theater experience because you could just hear the sniffles. And like me and Dad are boo-hooing in the theater. They get back and like Chewie sees that Leia's gone and he like falls down and you've got that entire cry. And like I have a distinct memory of when they get back and Chewbacca has his moment. I have a distinct memory, and Dad, sorry if this is too like intimate or whatever, but like I have a memory of Dad next to me like covering his face and going, "This is too much." Like not that it was bad, but it was just overwhelming because there was so much. And then it's just Ben standing on it, and you're hoping as he's just standing on the wreckage, looking out at the ocean, and you hear, "Hey, kid." And I mean, I remember melting into the seat like, oh my God. Yep. And it's just what Star Wars is all about. It's redemption. Go back to what George said Star Wars is for. It's to give kids a fun, entertaining thing that reminded him of things that entertained him when he was a kid, that also teaches them the value of choosing selflessness over selfishness. It's Ben letting go and letting go of the bad things he's done and accepting I've made mistakes, but I'm going to be who I'm supposed to be. And it's redemption and it's forgiveness. It's what we wish Anakin could have got. Anakin got redemption, but Anakin didn't get a Dad I Know. Anakin didn't get his was different, which we'll get to in a second, but Anakin's was different. And he got to actively and with word and deed repent of what he had been. And it's so powerful. That's Ben's side of it. Han, again, he's just a memory, and it's not even like a Force Ghost thing. It's Ben's projection. And I have a little bit of like a fan theory headcanon that like this is Leia maybe a little bit influencing the moment, because she doesn't disappear. Leia doesn't disappear until later. And I think she is fading, but I think she's influencing this moment because he's heard her voice, but he needs reconciliation with the father. And that's what this moment is. And Han, even though he's gone, even though he's dead, he says, you're just a memory. Yeah, but your memory,
Right.
and it is his memory. All the talk he's done about Han
Oh yeah,
Solo and
it's
how
all the
disappointing
lines from
father
Force
he was,
Awakens.
when he remembers his father,
Mm-hmm.
and if you've read The Dark Tower, he remembers the face of his father.
Right.
It's the hand on his cheek. It's
Yes.
you do have what it takes. Like, you are good enough. And again, as a parent, that's what you want.
That's right.
No matter what your child has done, like, you want to know, you want to know that you'll be able to do it. But most importantly, you want them to know that no matter what, you don't give up on them, and you love them, and you're there for them,
That's
and
right.
you believe in them and believe in their best. And this moment is the culmination of parenthood in Star Wars.
Without
It's
a doubt.
just so powerful.
It's so good. And Adam Driver, the acting in this
Oh my
scene,
gosh.
like, he's a little boy standing there.
Yeah.
And he had, like, his whole visage change, everything about him.
His physicality, like, talk about physical performances.
Yes.
His physical performance, when he says, it's like up to the moment the word dad comes out of his mouth,
Yes.
Kylo Ren is holding on, like, you can see him hanging on, and then just the shoulders come down. Dad. Like, he's just a kid talking to his dad, like, saying,
correct.
Dad, I'm sorry. Dad, I love you.
so
Dad, I
good.
didn't mean it. Like, oh my gosh, I could keep going, but I know we've been
yes.
going at this for an hour already.
That's all right. Well, that is fantastic, and it's hard to think we can top it, but we've got two more. So let's jump into number 2 with, as you just previously mentioned, you have Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi, and that "Father help me please" moment.
When the camera cuts from this to Vader, it is a mask, and I don't know how they did it, but it's a mask, and you can see an expression on the face of the mask on Vader. It's the note that I wrote to you when I sent it to you earlier. It's the moment. Again, I wasn't around in 1983, but it's the moment when you're sitting watching the movie for the first time. And something that I have had the privilege of getting to do is I got to take a friend who, I don't know how, never seen Star Wars, always wanted to, knew nothing about it, to the point that we watch A New Hope, we're talking through the credits, she's kind of recapping what we've gone through, and she's like, okay, and so hang on, he never even got to meet his father, and then Darth Vader murders him. And I was like, oh my God, she doesn't know.
She doesn't know.
Like, completely blank slate. Like, we got to go through all of those, and we went through every single movie, finished The Last Jedi the week before The Rise of Skywalker came out. And then we got to go see it together in the theater, me and her and my wife. And like, it was a whole thing. Awesome. But I got to watch this moment with her, and she had what I imagine everybody had, getting to see it for the first time. Again, for me, it was just always there, but it's there, and he's being tortured, and he's screaming, "Father, help, please help." And it cuts to Vader, and she goes, "Come on, Anakin." And she hasn't even seen the prequels at this point, but she goes, "Come on, Anakin, you're in there. Come on, Anakin." And he, picks up the Emperor and throws him, and it's the moment Return of the Jedi takes on a different meaning. It's the moment. It's not just Luke's a Jedi now. It's not the return of the idea of the Jedi. It's the return of a very specific Jedi. It's Anakin Skywalker is back, and he brings balance to the Force. He fulfills the prophecy. He becomes who he's supposed to be because his son asks for his help. And his little boy said, "Dad, help me." And we get to come back now to my number 6 moment. It's the fulfillment of, "Annie, I'm pregnant. I won't let you die. I won't let this happen." It's Padme's child. It's he's looking in this, and I'm like, I gotta think, like, he's looking at this face and seeing Padme's eyes. He's seeing her crooked smile, like something in there that's her, and he's seeing that and remembering it and thinking, this is the fulfill, like, I'm a dad. This is my little boy asking for my help. And again, that's what you want as a parent. You want, no matter what, you want your kids, no matter how old they are, to be able to come to you and say, "I need your help," and for you to be there for him. And he's never been there, but he gets to be now. And it's just so good. It's so good.
That's right. And everything else is out the window at that point.
Yeah.
Your kid
nothing else matters. Go back to Din Djarin. It's everything he's believed, everything he's given his entire life to doesn't matter because his little boy asked for help.
That's right. He needs him. Well, let's get into number 1, because that's all we got left.
Yeah.
No, I am your father.
It had to be this one. This had to be the number 1, because this is the moment Star Wars becomes about fathers and sons, or becomes about parenthood. there's been the idea of Luke having his dad's legacy, and his dad is this figure that he looks up to and all of that. But this is the moment. Everything that has happened, again, I wasn't around in 1980, but everything that has happened in the first two movies, just read what Dad said. Everything that has come before is now recontextualized. Every word that old Ben said. Was it a lie? What does it mean? How is it different from a certain point of view? We get that later. Everything Luke has ever thought about his father, everything Vader has ever done, you've got to look at in a different light now, because that's Anakin Skywalker. That's not just the villain. That's Anakin Skywalker. And again, I get to cut back to watching it with a friend. So we get to this, and like I've got my phone out like to record her, and like I was real clever. Hang on, where is it? I pick it up, and like she's sitting on this side of me, and so I just like act like I'm texting, and then I just like hold it here so that I can get the reaction. And it was great. I am your father happens. She just goes very still, stands up, and walks out of my house. Like she just gets up, and we're like, do we need to go get her? And she comes back in, and she goes, I don't even want to finish this.
Wow.
And so like the movie ends, but the conversation we're having after the fact, she goes, how's he going to kill his own father? You can't kill your own father. And I go, oh, good. You've discovered the central conflict of the next movie. But like, it changes everything here. And this is something I've been saving for this final point that ties back to the previous, the Father Help Me Please.
Yeah.
It's again kind of a headcanon, and I'm not completely up to date on the most recent comics that have touched on stuff that Vader's done. The original Charles Soule run I read of the Vader comics, which are just incredible. So I'm not sure if anything has touched on this recently, but I kind of have this headcanon. And if you've read those comics, there's like the meditation field where you see Vader in his meditation, and it's his charred form with these like white kind of glowing places where his limbs should be, his phantom limbs. Right. And there's the field of butterflies around the fire. And through the comics, the more atrocities Vader commits, the butterflies are snuffed out one by one by one by one by one. And, but it's the idea that there's still light in him. There's still good in him. And that carries on throughout his entire term as Darth Vader. I kind of have the feeling, and I would love to see this touched on, and if it already has been, somebody correct me. The way that I look at it, the moment Darth Vader heard the words Luke Skywalker for the first time, Darth Vader died and Anakin Skywalker woke up. And everything about Vader, or maybe Vader didn't die, but Anakin woke up. And a fight that had been given up on was awake and was back, because the only thing Anakin had of value was his love. And he was told that it was no good, which is why Palpatine was able to manipulate it. But love is so pure and such a good thing. And the moment he thinks the thing he loved, his wife and child, were gone, what's the point? Give up, become a monster, do whatever, just live on hate because there's nothing else. And then Luke Skywalker destroyed the Death Star. Yep. Well, there's only one person that can be. There's only one way this goes. And from that moment, Anakin Skywalker is awake. And in my head, what I picture is whoever says the names Luke Skywalker to Vader first, the moment it happens, the butterflies erupt in just a cacophony of light inside that hellscape meditation sphere. And he's awake and he's back and he is fighting and clawing to take over and to take control up to the moment, Father, help me, please. And that's it. That's when he's won. That's when Vader is silenced forever. And Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi, has truly returned. And this is the culmination of 20 plus years of dedicating himself to becoming the monster. And like, I've got to think, like, what did Vader think was going to happen here? Like, I acknowledge that I'm Anakin Skywalker for the first time in 2 decades, and that's gonna be okay. That's not going to give Anakin Skywalker more power over me. That's not going to submit myself to the idea that I am this boy's father. That is Padme's son. She and I had a son, and he survived, and I can be with him. Like, join me and we'll rule the galaxy. That's a cheap excuse for a lie of what this should be, because Anakin knows I'm Anakin Skywalker. That is my son. And
Yeah.
all of the stuff I've said about fathers and sons and parenthood and everything, it all just comes to a head here in this moment. Like, I am your father. It's sinister in the moment because he's trying to make it work. Vader is trying to make it work, but Anakin Skywalker's awake. And
that's right. I love that.
I think it's
and
so impactful.
I just learned relatively recently that name was delivered to him by none other than Boba Fett in one of the comic books.
I've seen a shot.
Yeah,
and I wasn't sure if that was canon, if that was from
that is the canon
recent.
comic book. Our guest last week was Heather Antos, who's working on Star Wars comic stuff, and she worked on that one. And so, yeah, Boba comes because they sent out bounty hunters to try and find out who was the person that blew up the Death Star, who was the person that caused this big setback for the Empire. And he comes back and he says, was it something like, what did you find? Not much, just a name, Skywalker or whatever.
See, I'd seen that and I didn't know
that moment is the moment you're talking about.
That makes me so happy. Because again, like I would life goals, life dreams. I would love to write a Star Wars, I mean, who wouldn't? But like if I could write a moment, I would love to write what's going on the inside, like that meditation, that sphere. And to me, like what I see is just the butterflies exploding. Like that's
absolutely.
I love knowing that is canon because I've seen a couple of. I need to go read that now because I've seen just a couple of like screenshots, and I've thought, is that something like old pre-Disney or is that current canon? Because I really want that to be canon.
Yes, that is truly awesome. Canon.
That's fantastic.
So, well, that is a phenomenal number one. I really don't have a lot to top this with. I do usually throw in a bonus selection at the end. And so while not necessarily a parenting moment, but a parenting setup, I had to go with Kanan and Hera.
Yep.
Because
arguably the best parents in the galaxy.
Without question. And they are the parents for the Ghost crew, setting aside Jason Syndulla. But what they do for this whole group, for Zeb, for Ezra, for Sabine, Chopper even.
Yeah.
There's so much of it that I love, and I gush about Rebels all the time. It's especially fresh right now because we're rewatching Rebels with my daughters, one of whom has kind of come around to being more interested in Star Wars and wanted to kind of jumping off point. So we decided this is where we would start. And so going through that, what I will also say is this was your dad's number 7 was actually Kanan's sacrifice, which you you commented on your number 7.
Yeah.
So what that leads me to, that's right. What that leads me to kind of add into, the end of this is I did go back and listen to get your dad's top 7 just to see what the overlap was. His number 7 was Kanan's sacrifice, and you definitely highlighted that as a relation to your number 7 and how, like you said, it was almost your number 7. His number 6 was Bail Organa's message for Leia in Bloodlines. The recorded message that he wanted her to find should something ever happen, so she would know who her real parents were, and the power of that whole deal and how it got out, not in the way that she wanted it to. But that, to me, that ties into, in a similar note, his number 5 was Galen's message for Jen. So you have the overlap there.
Yep.
Number 4, he had Anakin's redemption in Return of the Jedi. Not as, basically what you said. It wasn't specifically the Father help me please moment, but it was just that whole thing of him saving his son, sacrificing himself. His number 3 was when Han calls to Ben in Force Awakens on the bridge.
And that was almost there.
That booming, barking voice that makes you stop in your tracks, that dad voice that reaches out. And then similarly was Leia reaching out to Ben through the Force. His number 2 was Mando and Grogu season 2. So really he went wide swath, which is totally fair. And then his number 1 was Shmi's sacrifice, sending Anakin with Qui-Gon.
And again, I had to leave Shmi out of this, and that hurt me. Oh, that's cool. That's very cool.
It's totally understandable, but there's definitely overlap in your list. There's no question that there is a father and son connection and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's these kind of conversations that I love. And like you, I could spend another 2 hours digging deep on these little tiny minutia and little tiny moments. But I don't have that time. You don't have that time.
I see the timestamp and I'm like, oh crap, because I could just keep going.
That's right. Well, we will go again sometime. But in the meantime, before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter. I know that Twitter's not your most active go-to spot, but you have Twitch stuff, lots of great stuff going on.
Yeah, so on Twitter and on Twitch, you can find us father and son at asfast92, so ASFAS92. We're on Twitter and Twitch through there. We're also on YouTube. You can find our links from there. Me and Dad are both just by our names. We're on Twitter. You can find us from our page there. But yeah, I'll be streaming late nights usually for me on Twitch when I can, when I'm awake enough. I like to do game streams. I'm finishing Dark Souls, which is not Star Wars-y, but it's a challenge I set for myself 10 years ago, gave up on, and then decided I needed to fulfill. And I'm like, I'm at the end. And once I finish Dark Souls, I've got like one more stream, I think, and I'll be done. And then I'm going to do some Star Wars. I'm going to play Bounty Hunter from like 2004. I'm gonna go back and play that once I finish Dark Souls. So I'll be doing that. Me and Dad try to do morning streams on Saturdays. Doesn't always get to happen, but when we can get together and do stuff together, we love doing that. So we always announce when we're going to be going live, and you can always find us there.
Excellent. Well, I have to agree with your dad. There's a great live chat crew tonight. Thank you everybody for hanging out with us. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for tuning into the show. As I say all the time, if you want to follow us on social media, we are at WillsPod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us in all of those locations. We would love it. If you're one of our audio listeners, we'd love for you to subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/podcast of the Wills. Check out the video feed. Check that out, subscribe, mark the bell so that you know whenever we're going to go live. And until we get together again next time, may the force be with you always.
May the force be with you.